The dubbed Gold Edition of last year's Resident Evil Village, which updates the game with the so-called Winter's Expansion, sees a new story mode added to the game. 2 new Mercenary stages with 3 new characters and the highly anticipated third-person mode. I have played all 3 of these editions and will go over each one. Starting with the new story, which is the biggest addition to the game, the Shadows of Rose DLC centers around Rose Winters, the daughter of Resident Evil 7 and Village's main protagonist Ethan Winters, where she enters the consciousness of the Mutamycete fungus on a quest to get rid of her unique powers gifted to her through her father. Now, I usually research how long games are so I can estimate how long it will take me to complete them, and the length for this DLC on Bing told me it was 4 hours long. It is not. On the hardest difficulty, I completed Shadows of Rose within 2.5 hours, which is a good length for a DLC episode like this. It wasn't too long, but it wasn't too short either. Regarding the content itself, I rather enjoyed it quite a bit. It reworks 2 major levels from the main game, which is Castle Dimitrescu and the house from the second lord of the village, before ending things in what's probably the most epic Resident Evil boss fight of all time, which I may make a separate video discussing that in particular. While I can criticize Capcom for not just making entire new levels for this DLC, I can understand that they may not have wanted to spend the budget to make an original level just for this game's DLC, and it's not as if the DLC for Resident Evil 7 had original levels either. Much of that was recycled content as well. The one issue here is the story. It's very straightforward and doesn't offer much that's unexpected, having 2 major character returns, one of which was ruined by a frustrating mini-boss section, and the other that was predictable from the very beginning. What's more, Capcom has said that the Shadows of Rose DLC will end the Winter storyline. But by the end of the DLC, it seems to be a setup for what's to come in Resident Evil 9. So either Capcom is lying, or this whole Winter's family thing was a waste of time to begin with. Either way, the unique addition to the gameplay, which are Rose's powers, a first for a Resident Evil game, starts out small at first, but becomes extremely reliable, and Capcom was smart not to allow the player to abuse her abilities by placing a limit on how much the player can actually use them, which forces a method of strategy to be implemented. Regarding the scare factor, the DLC for the most part isn't scary at all, with the exception of one part that I thought was extremely clever. It's arguably the scariest part in all of Resident Evil Village as a whole, and I want to show part of it here in this video, with the game's sound applied and no narration from me included. Here it is. I give Capcom big kudos for that inclusion within this story expansion. That was effectively scary. So, all in all, Shadows of Rose is quite good if you set your expectations accordingly. There isn't much in the way of replayability, especially with regards to the achievement list, and I've earned every achievement in this game on PC. But the core content of what's here is good. Next, there's additions to Mercenaries mode. The return of Mercenaries was one of the best parts about Resident Evil Village as a whole. It was a quality return to a classic mode from prior Resident Evil games, and this DLC adds 2 new levels divided into a few stages each, along with 3 new characters. Chris Redfield, and 2 of the game's main boss characters, Heisenberg and the infamous but extremely popular Lady Dimitrescu. I've played as all 3 characters, and 2 of them are extremely fun to use, with one of them being absolute garbage. Chris Redfield is a great character. He's very versatile and well balanced between offense and defense. The best thing with him is that he can take on hordes of zombies and lichens without breaking a sweat. And he has some neat upgrades as well if you pay attention to what you're doing. He is best played as an offensive character but has enough tools to provide a defensive strategy. Heisenberg is, without a doubt, the worst of the three new characters. He is god awful. For one, he can't heal at all, which automatically makes him a defensive character. To make matters worse, his damage output is very weak, even with his hammer fully upgraded. And his attack animations are underwhelming to say the least. Whether you're using his projectile attacks or getting up close and personal with his hammer is extremely unsatisfying with the sparse impact that's given to you. They could have done a much better job with Heisenberg, but alas, he sucks. Lastly, we have Lady Dimitrescu, and honestly, they did a fantastic job with this character. She's the best new addition to the game when it comes to Mercenaries. Capable of launching a swarm of flies at enemies, summoning one of her three daughters into combat, or throwing large vanities, which is too funny. Lady Dimitrescu is a powerhouse character who is pure offense. She's not capable of blocking, but she's so OP that she doesn't even need to block. I loved what Capcom did with her so much that I went back through multiple stages of Mercenaries mode with her, and only once did I get less than a double S rank for my score. She's a brilliant addition to the game, even if they did make her a bit shorter than her main story counterpart.
The entire bloodline of House Dimitrescu is done in by the likes of you.
Finally, there's third-person mode from the main game, which handles virtually the same as the Shadows of Rose DLC. The player is fully able to toggle the option on or off in the menu, and with regards to the actual execution of third-person mode, it's great. Ethan is very versatile in the way he moves. The camera especially works, including in tight spaces where it never loses track of the player, never zooms in too close to the action taking place on screen, and the animations, which will sometimes shift back to the first-person perspective briefly, was also updated in third person, giving the player a full view of what's happening, which refreshes the boss encounters, giving them a new look that wasn't previously showcased due to the limited perspective. Now, the definitive version of Resident Evil Village, in my humble opinion, is the original first-person perspective, which is evident given that's the game's core vision, but it's nice having a new addition like this and proves that Capcom can pull off a Resident Evil game that offers both a first-person and a third-person perspective, all wrapped up in the same experience. While it's disappointing that we'll never get more DLC episodes to show how the boss characters came to be what they are in the main game, particularly Lady Dimitrescu and Mother Miranda could have benefited from having their origins explained in visual detail with some tightly scripted DLC episodes, which is what Capcom did with the Evelyn character in Resident Evil 7. What is offered here is a nice change from the original experience, even if it's a bit ham-fisted in certain areas. I definitely recommend the Winter's expansion for anyone who enjoyed Resident Evil Village, and I'm looking forward to playing the full game in third person along with slicing through more waves of lichens to my leisure.